You're listening to the Weekly Brew.
Last fall on the Weekly Brew podcast, Kevin was able to go one-on-one with U of H head basketball coach Kelvin Sampson on episode 16 to preview the Cougs' 2015-2016 season. As we approach the end of May, we're happy to welcome back Coach Sampson to the podcast. And Coach, your team finished last year with a 22-10 mark. You finished as the number 2 overall seed in the AAC. But the Cougs had 2 tough games to close the season with Tulane and Georgia Tech. How would you assess your club's year, and how do you build on that moving forward?
Everything is about building here, and it's a process. You know, last season was, part of it. When we came in, it's all a lesson in perspective. I tell our kids and our coaches that you're always going to have setbacks as you're building. 3 weeks after we got here in April of 2014, we realized that we had 5 players on the team. So, that's pretty tough having to start in the middle of April recruiting a team because most of the good players obviously have already decided on a school or at least have the list of schools that they're going to visit, so it's tough to get in on them. But I thought our coaches did a good job of, figuring some things out. For instance, we signed Devontae Pollard, who was second team all-conference on May 20th. So everything's relevant when it comes to recruiting. But we went into that season with that team. I'll forever be indebted and grateful that I was able to have kids like L.J. Rose and LeBron Barnes, J-Rod Stiggers, Chicken Knowles. Those were the kids that were still here. Adam Drexler. I found out later that they had signed a young man named J.C. Washington. So that gave us a 6th player, but still we had to go out and sign. I think we signed 7 guys. But we went into that season knowing that was, an opportunity to establish culture, get our kids to understand this is what we want our program to be known for. And I thought those kids did a great job of that. Winning 4 straight games at the end of the season, I thought helped us going into the off season. And then in the off season, when you win 13 games, you don't feel good about your season, but I felt good about the program. And I think there's a distinct difference there. Going forward, we knew we had laid some building blocks, but we also knew we had a good recruiting class coming in. And my assistants did a great job identifying kids. We had some transfers that bounced our way. But going into the season, we knew we were going to be a lot better, but we also knew that we were going to play a really good schedule because our league was probably the best it has been. At SMU and Temple, Cincinnati, Connecticut, Tulsa, all those teams were really good this past year. But just to expound on your point about how would I assess the season, I think we had a successful season in terms of we laid more blocks. We built. We beat every team in the league. Winning at Connecticut, winning at Temple, those were huge wins. Did it end the way we wanted it to? No, but at the same time, it's going to end usually with a loss. So every team's going to lose their last game, but 2. The NIT, well, I guess I don't even know the name of those other tournaments. There's only 2 or 3 teams that's going to. There's only 2 or 3 teams that's going to end their season with a win. So, but it's really important that you don't allow 40 minutes to define 6 months. That's something I made sure our kids understand, that we went from 13 wins to 22 wins, and our challenge this off season, going into the summer, next fall, before we start practicing in October, is put ourselves in a position where we can take another jump, and I think we will.
In terms of putting yourself in a position to make that sort of jump, obviously last year was an enormous jump, and I'm anticipating really strong improvements for this season as well, because you're bringing in some guys like Shango Yami, I guess, was already signed earlier in the year, but he'll be playing this coming year. That's a guy who's 6'11", 250 pounds out of Northern Oklahoma College. And then you got Devin Davis out of Odessa College, who was recently signed, talking 6'7", 230 pounds. So one thing it seemed like you guys lacked last year was certainly not length. You had length, but really size, guys who could bang inside. Do you think you address that need in terms of the guys you have coming in this season?
Yeah, that's a great point. and we talked about that going forward with our recruiting. But you don't this isn't Walmart or some kind of shopping center where you can just go address every need in one recruiting class. For instance, last year we had to get good guards. With Rob Gray, Damian Dotson, Ronnie Johnson. We had those three guys coming in, and obviously we knew how good they were. When you guys see them, it's a surprise to you because you hadn't seen them before. Well, we recruited them, so obviously we knew what they were capable of. But with Rob, Ronnie, and Damian, we knew we were going to be a lot better at guards. But we also knew that our four spot, for instance, with Devontae and Chicken, they had length and athleticism, but we had no girth. And that's where we knew going into this recruiting class we had to address that. But with Devin and I call him Big Val. I can't even pronounce his last name. But with Devin and Big Val, I think we addressed that. But I also think that Kyle Meyer didn't have a good year. He would be the first to tell you that. But there's two guys that have really stood out to me in the spring and the off season, and that's Chicken and Kyle. I think those two guys both are going to have really good years. I mean, they're really locked in. They're in the gym, they're in the weight room, they're working with the coaches, our staff. These guys are I think are going to be really improved. So while everybody focuses on the incoming guys, Armani Brooks, Morris Dunnigan, those are two really good guards. Morris Dunnigan may be the best all-around guard on the team, and nobody, of course, you haven't seen him yet, but you'll see what I mean when you watch him play. Armani is the best shooter on the team, so I think we've really improved our bench with Armani and Morris, because those guys both can play. But up front is probably where we had to address losing Devontae, but we did it with a very good player, but also somebody that gives us some size versus length inside.
I'm glad to hear that Kyle and Chicken are in the gym. Obviously, that's good to know. And of course, the gym would be the vastly improved facilities you guys have. The Guy V. Lewis Development Center, $25 million practice center, which I've been in numerous times, and it is gorgeous. I think everyone would agree. How much of a difference has that made in terms of being able to get the kids in, give them effective practice time, also in terms of recruiting?
You hit on the two key things. Number one, it's called a development center for a reason. We do not practice there. I've always been a firm believer. You practice where you play. We play in Huffines, and that's where we practice. Now, sometimes if we play on the road, we'll stay in and practice here. But for the most part, I want our guys shooting as much as possible on their own goals. That's why they call it a home court advantage. You get to shoot on your rims. But the recruiting piece is hard to quantify that. For instance, we live in a great city for unofficial visits. I coached at Washington State University for 7 years. I was a head coach there, and I think we signed 2 players within a 200-mile radius of that campus in 7 years. And we had some really good teams. But that was one of the disadvantages of coaching at Washington State was proximity to players. Well, here in Houston, that's a huge advantage. Other than the month of July, kids can take unofficial visits anytime they want, as often as they want. So what we've done is identify the top players in the class of 2017 and 2018, and we get them up there on this campus, and we're so proud of this place. Before they even throw their car in park, we're snatching the door open, pulling them out, sprinting over here to show them this beautiful facility. But we're very proud of it. I can't thank Our Board of Regents, President Couture, Mac Rhodes, Hunter Yurchek, and all the people that helped make this dream a reality. Dave Mars and his wife. And I could go on and on. We have so many people to thank for this facility, but it's just now paying dividends. You don't build it and then all of a sudden it works its magic the day we open. It takes time, and that's where when we got here in 2014, 2015, so you're working with the 14-15 season, but we knew that the two classes that we had to focus on was 17 and 18. 15 and 16 were kind of a done deal. The best players had already identified their schools. These other colleges do a great job. They had marked the kids here, and they were down the road with them. But we marked the 2017 class and the 2018 class, and those are the kids that we're getting in here, and it's going to be a big part of making sure that we continue on this right road.
Yeah, and speaking of continuing on the right road, I mean, it seems that you have a lot of recruits starting to buy into the program and see the success that you've been kind of building the last few years at U of H. But I know in the past few years that the NCAA has kind of changed some of its rules regarding, contact with prospective athletes during the summer months, when they're playing on that AAU circuit. Can you walk us through some of those changes, and how does that impact you in terms of recruiting and scouting those prospective student athletes?
It really starts in April. The only time you can go out in April is all the weekends, and the tournaments are set up at different sites. For instance, New York, Atlanta, Dallas, Kansas City, Indianapolis, Houston. Our assistant coaches were out all those weekends. Not identifying kids, but following the kids that we had already identified. And you never know when you're going to find the sleeper. People say, "Why go to such a small school? Nobody will notice me." If you're on an AAU team, you're going to get noticed. But in the summer, you have Nike tournaments, you have Adidas tournaments, you have Under Armour tournaments, and kids are identified based on the shoe team that sponsors them. For instance, the Harrison twins' father coaches the Under Armour team here. They're called the Houston Defenders. Marlon Lowe coaches the Adidas team. They're called Team Texas. The Nike team is the Houston Hoops. And then there's other teams scattered in and around those guys. So there's a lot of really good players in Houston, and there's so many AAU teams. I think we counted 14 AAU teams that play out on the circuit. So in the month of July, when we're allowed to go out, there's 3 weekends, 15 days, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, the last 3 weekends of July. So there's 3 5-day periods that we're allowed to go out. We can't go out till 5 o'clock on Wednesday, and you have to be in by 5 o'clock on Sunday. Those rules are set in stone, and there's no problem being out at that time on Sunday, and there's no problem getting in starting on time on Wednesday, because that coincides when most AAU tournaments start and end.
One thing I'm curious about is last season, obviously you had not scheduled up. The non-conference schedule was, I remember you say that it looked more challenging at the beginning of the season than it ended up being at the end of the season. But just given the steps forward that you've made with recruiting, with the team cohesion and the guys you have coming back as leaders on the team, is there going to be an effort to schedule up a little bit more this year in terms of the non-conference games that you'll be playing?
Yeah, that's a good point. It's a very valid point, too. And I agree with it. I think your schedule should reflect your team. This year I looked at the CBS Sports preseason poll. I've seen the ESPN. I think they call them the too early polls. ESPN and CBS, and Rhode Island's in both of them. Rhode Island's ranked as high as number 16 in the nation in one. I've seen Harvard getting a lot of votes. Arkansas getting a lot of votes. So we play Harvard at home. We play Rhode Island at home. We go to LSU, and we're negotiating a deal right now with Arkansas. So that tells you right there the upgrade that we've had in our schedule. And then the other teams, we've really tried to identify the highest RPI teams. For instance, North Florida was an NCAA tournament last year, and they've got almost their whole team back. So we're trying to play teams like that, teams that and some of these other conferences that are predicted to win their league. So, yeah, our schedule will be greatly enhanced. We also play an exempt tournament in South Florida. We'll play 3 games there, and there's a lot of Power 5 teams and really good mid-major teams like Mercer and Kent State, Hofstra, schools like that. So we have a really good schedule this year.
The U of H last year, it seemed like they played to the level of their opponents. You guys had some, tough games against some teams with lower RPIs, but, when you played SMU, top 15 RPI, you guys were neck and neck on the road, just falling by 4 points, and then actually, beat them at home by 3. How important is it for your team to have those, high RPI, high value games, and how much does it, get your team fired up to go and play on the road in those like hostile environments?
Well, I think it's important to challenge your team. The year before, one of the most difficult challenges we had when we got here in April of 2014 was there was no game scheduled. As hard as it is to recruit starting in the middle of April, multiply that by 5, and that's how hard it is to schedule. You just don't snap your fingers and go get on people's schedule in April. For instance, our schedule right now is pretty much done. We're still in the month of May. So, you think about the difficulty in matching dates and getting teams to play, whether it's home or away. But one of the things that we found out, especially this offseason, because of the improvements that the program's made, and the direction we're going, a lot of teams won't play us, especially home and home. There's some really good mid-major programs, but if I'm going to play somebody from Ohio, I'd rather play Ohio State. If I'm going to play somebody from Florida, I'd rather play the University of Florida. Okay, let's play those schools. Yeah, well, you got to get them to agree to it, and that's something that's difficult. That's why I appreciate LSU playing us. Arkansas, they're thinking about playing us, and that's not easy to do. I mean, I think it's harder. Sometimes it's harder to get the kind of schedule you need or you want than it is to recruit. It takes 2 to tango.
Well, I'm curious. You said at times the style of play you guys had last season reflected the personnel that you had on the floor and the talents of the guys you were working with. So you did have one of the best, the best offense in the AAC at 77.4 points per game, and you emphasize offensive rebounding. I'm just curious, based on what you've seen and what you know about the way this team is put together this coming year, will the style on the floor change? Are we still going to see the running offense, the back and forth, up and down game that we saw last season?
Kevin and Austin, I sit around and I'm a tinkerer. I'll get on the board and I'll have an idea in my head. Where I sit at home, I always keep a stack of basketball court drawings. And if something comes in my head, or if I'm watching an NBA game and I see something, I'm always drawing something up. But when I do that, it's everything's relative to how fast we can play. I want to play faster. I'm always thinking, how can we get faster? For instance, I want our point guards to circle up the court and catch it getting up the court after made baskets. I want to get across half court in 3 seconds or less. I want to score. You think about the shot clock. There's 3 10-second periods there. The first 10, the middle 10, and the last 10. Of those 3 10-minute segments, where do you want to get your shots? You want to get it in the first 10, the middle 10, or the last 10? Now, a lot of schools run a very patterned half-court offense, and that's great. That fits them. But I want to score as many baskets as we can in the first 10 seconds of the clock, and that's where our pace comes in. One of the things that I look at on the bench is what pace are we playing at? And you can tell per 100 possessions, how many possessions would you have per 100 based on your pace of play? Well, we want to have as close to 80 possessions per game as we can. And if we're playing at when we're at our weakest, when we're not playing very good, the first thing you can look at is pace. When we're playing a slower pace, that's where we struggle because we're not set up like that. We're set up to run. When Dotson and Armani Brooks, Morris Dunnigan, Rob Gray, when those guys are sprinting to the corners and we've got a rim runner putting his nose to the front of that rim, and our foreman who takes it in is trailing in the slot. We're set up for space. Now it's a matter of how can we get the ball in the paint. Because when the ball gets in the paint, good things happen. So, yeah, I mean, that's who we are. That's how we're going to recruit. That's how I want to play. The faster, the better.
Coach, you're known as a guy who, follows basketball at all levels. If you're not coaching basketball or recruiting or drawing up game plans, you're watching basketball, whether it's the NBA, college, or something along that nature. And, you spent time with the Rockets organization as assistant coach. And I'm just curious, when you sit back and watch the NBA playoffs as they're going on right now, I mean, you've got a great series with Oklahoma City, Golden State, LeBron doing his thing in the East. How do you differentiate that from being a coach and being a fan?
I do love to watch basketball. Obviously, I'm very close to Coach Popovich in San Antonio. The Rockets are near and dear to me. I'm a big fan of Golden State. A big fan of Oklahoma City too. I love the way they play. Their bigs. Their bigs cause a problem. I thought Golden State would struggle with Oklahoma City because when Golden State goes small, Oklahoma City is one of the few teams that don't chase them. By chase them, I mean if Golden State puts their small lineup out there with Draymond Green at the 5 and Iguodala, Thompson, Curry, and either Barnes or Livingston, most teams will try to match up with that by playing a small lineup themselves. Oklahoma City, they don't have to do that. Because their bigs are so active, and they're a big problem on the offensive glass. I thought that was the biggest difference in the San Antonio and Oklahoma City series. I get how good Westbrook and Durant is, but Cantor and Adams, you playing those two cavemen in there together, they pose a problem. So when I watch, I try to see where advantages are. Try to see what the coach is trying to do with his game plan and whether his team's executing it. And obviously, all the coaches left are playing now have outstanding teams or outstanding coaches. So, and I try to learn. If you're not working to get better, I don't know how you have success.
Billy Donovan obviously has taken over Oklahoma City from Scott Brooks, a guy who was part of the championship team here and very near and dear to our hearts, but had been criticized for coaching. And then Billy Donovan comes in, loses that first game to the Spurs, and then comes back and makes adjustments and has I think now everybody's talking about what a good coach he might be, despite only getting one third-place vote for Coach of the Year. So, I mean, is that what Oklahoma City needed? Because years ago, this team it's going to be in the finals every year with Westbrook and Durant. It's going to every year, and then all of a sudden they fall off, and now they're back. Is Donovan the difference, do you think?
Let's go back to that Coach of the Year thing. You don't ever want to win Coach of the Year. That means your team was bad and then you were good.
Steve Kerr withholding, but
yeah. Well, 73 wins. Had he won 68, he probably wouldn't have been Coach of the Year. But yeah, I think the Thunder, they had so many changes last year, and I'm not defending Scott Brooks, but Cantor just got there, Adams just got there. They made the big trade. They have so many different guys. You could tell that they were a year away. They needed that experience. And Durant was hurt. I mean, let's give Coach Brooks some credit here. Durant's healthy this year. And just recently he looks like Kevin Durant. Well, he didn't look like Kevin Durant last year. He was hurt almost the entire year. Westbrook had to do way too much. He's shooting the ball 30 times a game. Now with Durant back, you find out how good Westbrook is. Westbrook's playing the best basketball in his career. He's a monster. Westbrook, Durant. You think about how good Ibaka's been for him. They actually get better when they put him on the bench and they put Adams and they have Adams and Cantor in there. I thought Perkins really slowed him down at the end of his tenure there in Oklahoma City. So, with Adams, Cantor, Durant, Westbrook, the Robertson kid, it gives him a nice piece. He's kind of the current Cephalosha, if you will. I just like the way their team is set up, and they've got they got 2 of the 5 best players in the NBA. Let's give a lot of credit to those guys. But I think Billy's been a calming influence on them. I think that they've taught Billy a lot, and he had to learn about the NBA game. When I went from college to the NBA, I wasn't qualified to coach in the NBA. I really wasn't. I didn't know enough about it. I didn't know how to take advantage of the rules. I didn't know how to navigate back-to-backs, how much film to watch, when do you practice. You don't go from college to NBA knowing any of that. The 8-second rule, getting the ball across half court, and if it goes out of bounds prior to getting across half court, it doesn't reset. I didn't even know that rule. So there's so many things in the NBA that you don't know. And, one of my favorite sayings is you don't know what you don't know. And I'm sure that Billy's had to learn a lot, but you can tell he's a lot more comfortable now.
You had just mentioned, the Thunder having 2 of the top 5 players in the NBA, and one of them, Kevin Durant, is rumored to hit the free agent market this year. And there's a lot of question on whether or not he's going to stay in Oklahoma City, go to a place like Golden State, possibly San Antonio. Now, you spent some time in Norman, which isn't too far from Oklahoma City, and it seems like whenever I watch Thunder games, that's one of the things that I respect about the franchise. It seems almost like a college atmosphere. That team, that community, they're almost in tune with each other. They support each other. If you're Kevin Durant, do you see him, kind of feeling that community vibe and wanting to stay with Oklahoma City because of that huge support network that he has, or do you see him going to a larger market at the end of the year?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the fans. I think Oklahoma City, they're kind of a newbie NBA team, and some of the more established NBA cities like Chicago or Detroit, Cleveland, that Rust Belt up there, out west, or Miami Heat, New York Knicks, Lakers. Those are the NBA teams that's been around forever. But Oklahoma City is a very underrated market. I think that it's hard to say who has the best fans. I mean, you're always going to say your team or your city has the best fans. But that home court that Oklahoma City Thunder have with that fan base, Golden State and Oklahoma City are different than the other teams, in my opinion. That's a tough place to play. I mean, they rev it up, and they've learned to be NBA fans too. They got a taste of it during Hurricane Katrina when the New Orleans, at the time, New Orleans Hornets had to relocate. When they relocated in Oklahoma City, and they played I think they played 2 seasons there, if I'm not mistaken. Byron Scott was the coach, David West, Tyson Chandler, obviously Chris Paul, J.R. Smith. They had a really good team. And those fans in Oklahoma City really attached themselves to that New Orleans team. So now here comes the Seattle Supersonics relocating to Oklahoma City, and they were ready. And they have great fans. And Oklahoma City is a great area. I mean, it may not be the Knicks, it may not be the Lakers, but I can see Kevin Durant staying there and getting a statue. I mean, there'll be a statue of him outside that building. And wherever he goes at this point in his career, there will be no statues. To me, he's an Oklahoma City Thunder guy. And I hope he stays there. I hope he stays there for himself, and I hope he stays there for those fans.
So one thing, obviously, it's a big deal here in Houston would be the Rockets currently searching for a head coach. And there are some names that are rumored, swirling around, nothing concrete as of yet, as of the time we were recording this. But you've been there. You've been the coach of that team. You have a relationship with James Harden. We've seen him out at U of H games a few times this season. What does an incoming head coach of this team need to do to get the ship righted? Because there's talent on this team, but it is not being realized in terms of wins and losses.
Yeah, I think every coach has a plan. You have a system, a philosophy. And really all a system and a philosophy is how do you want your team to play at both ends? If you close your eyes and you visualize what you want your team to look like when the other team has the ball. How do you want to guard the ball? How do you want to guard ball screens? The emphasis on transition defense. Are you more interested in transition defense or offensive rebounding? All those questions have to be answered. But I think there's so many really, really good coaches in the NBA. But I think they've got to hire a coach that has a distinct, concise plan. He can't be all over the place. There's some coaches that it's a shotgun approach. They try to be good at 20 different things, and they wind up being good at nothing. You know, you have a defense and you have an offense. How do you want to play with the ball, and how do you want to play when the other team has the ball? What's your plan? I think that's where it starts. But they've got to really focus on getting a coach that has the right approach to that, because James is a challenge. I think all great players are. I mean, I've sat on that bench and coached against all those teams. Kevin Durant is a tough dude now. You know, Westbrook, those guys have their own idea about what to do, and they usually do it. So one thing I learned about coaching in the NBA, you better coach with one eye open and one ear closed. That means you better not try to see everything and hear everything. If you do, it'll drive you crazy.
Now, Coach, we definitely appreciate you taking the time and joining us this week on the Weekly Brew podcast. And as we understand, you've got some basketball camps coming up this summer. And for those that are interested in, signing up for those, signing up their kids, what is the best way for them to find out more information?
abcsportscamps.com/Kelvin Sampson basketball camp.
Make sure to go check out those Kelvin Sampson basketball camps. They start in June, and they're open from ages 2nd grade through 12th grade. But, Coach, thanks again for joining us this week on the podcast, and best of luck during the recruiting season, the summer camps, enjoying a little bit of vacation before you gear up for the 2016-2017 season.
Kevin and Austin, this arguably is the best interview I've done in my career. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, Coach.
All right, thanks, Coach.
All right, thanks, guys.